Hi, my name is Ryan Scherzinger, Programs Manager with the American Planning Association here at the National Planning Conference, here with Justin Moore. He is the Executive Director for the New York Public Design Commission, and he was the recent team leader on the Belize City Community Planning Assistance Teams that we did last year, and they presented on it here at the conference. And Justin, could you tell us a little bit about what the situation was? And it was specifically on the neighborhood of Yarborough in Belize City. And what was the situation when we got down there?
Great. Yeah, so the CPAT program, this was actually the APA's first international CPAT, so it was a really wonderful opportunity to bring this sort of technical assistance work to a community outside of the U.S. that really needed some help. Belize City, the Belize City Council, working with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, had an idea to look at a focused neighborhood development that fit within a larger land use and planning framework that was developing in the city, really focused on connecting that kind of core downtown heritage historic area that already had some tourism with the new port development. So these were kind of disconnected parts of the city that needed a link through the Yarborough, which was really kind of the core heart of the community in many ways, with the Yarborough Cemetery and a lot of rich heritage assets that were there, but still kind of disconnected from that important economic activity and really a need for planning and improvement in the neighborhood. So our team was really able to kind of dive right in and kind of understand some of the issues in the community, everything from historic preservation and cultural heritage to flood resiliency and green infrastructure that was really needed in improving that community long term, but also looking at really identifying kind of public assets such as parks, improving transportation in the neighborhood.
So as with all CPATs, part of the big thing for CPATs is community engagement. So tell us a little bit about how the community engagement process went, how people received the project, how they provided input, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, so it's really a great question, because I think one of the strengths of CPAT in the model is really that we're outsiders, right? We're kind of people with different expertise and background coming from all over the U.S. So we had team members from New York, Texas, Colorado, all over the place. So we're landing in this community that we don't know. So the community engagement piece was really key to making sure that the work that we're doing is relevant and necessary. So the structure, as the team leader, I had the opportunity to go on that first visit where we had the opportunity to meet with the mayor, the city council staff, and all sorts of different community organizations that they had sort of convened and were working with. And one of my favorite components of that was there was this local school where there are literally waves of students from classes from the local high school that came in and were helping inform our process and our questions. So that kind of very direct tie with organizations physically in the neighborhood. So we're not meeting at the city hall or in some kind of detached place. We're meeting with people in the community where things stand. And so that was a really great opportunity to hear all different kinds of voices. So from the elected officials, from people in the business community, but also people on the street. My favorite kind of story is that when sort of landed on that first site visit, I had a TV interview. And so the local partners there had made sure that they wanted people to know that this effort was happening. And so they worked to have us on TV and radio. So we did these short TV interviews like right when we started, just to tell people about the project. And so while we're walking around the city and touring the neighborhoods, people would come and walk up and say, "Hey, you're doing this, you're this planner from the US, what's going on?" And so that was really key to kind of have that kind of megaphone to reach more people. So that process was really great, and that was formative for us deciding who was going to be on the team, the kinds of expertise and issues that we brought back later. So then when we came back with the full team, we had really great workshops, focus groups, public meetings, different times of day, different locations to really reach as broad an audience as possible. And we got so much great feedback and input around that. And I think it was really formative for our work in that we were able to do work that was focused to things that that community wanted to advance. We obviously had our ideas and best practices that we have as experts in different fields coming here, but it was more important that the work that we were doing was rooted in the interests that we heard from people in those meetings.
So it's always really important to get political leadership involved and the elected officials involved in a project. So so how was that experience in Belize City?
Well, yeah, I think the first thing is that the mayor, Mayor Darrell Bradley, was really involved from the beginning and really engaged his staff. So Marilyn, I call her the deputy mayor, Carla, the single planning staff member, and having that investment from the very top leadership was key, and it was really committing the time and making the connections and resources. So the mayor actually joined us for one of our very long kind of work sessions and spent the afternoon with us kind of workshopping on us reporting back to things that we heard in the community meetings and hearing kind of things that he knew were possible or other things that we had missed. And so having that deep knowledge and leadership was really important to kind of bolster our work. And I think in many ways for these kind of smaller community projects where there is a situation with under-resourced communities and really wanting to do a project that's realistic, not us coming and making a big plan, a nice vision that isn't real and isn't possible. Having that leadership there to help us understand what's real and what's possible was really important. The thing that was interesting is while we were there were a number of different initiatives going on. There was a city branding campaign. There was responses to some zoning and new development initiatives that were happening. And so it was also important for us to see kind of real time what the challenges and interactions were in this community. And I think the flip side to that argument is that us being outsiders, the kind of the expertise, the types of conversations we were having, the way that we worked, right, with facilitating, let's say, a public meeting, or the way that we would go on a site visit, walk around, what we were looking at and paying attention to. The mayor was with us and his staff were with us while we were doing that. And so they're learning from that exposure with our team, oh, it's interesting that you're looking at this issue in a way that we didn't know or understand. Or, oh, that's really interesting the way that you kind of frame this community meeting in a way that we can have a different conversation. When we have that conversation, it's a political conversation. It goes a totally different way, and we don't get to reach the issues. So I think that there is a really great interaction and learning and exchange for them for how we worked as well.
So with this project, it was really important too, because obviously they were a very under-resourced community and things like that. And I think that you mentioned it earlier. You get this big shiny plan, and it sits on a shelf, and as the saying goes. But I know that our focus, the team's focus in this case, was really to leave them some tangible things and things like that. So tell us a little bit about some of what the team left behind that that the community could really dive into right away.
Right. Yeah, I think a really important part of our work with this CPAT was really trying to leave something that was actionable. And especially there was a unique opportunity here because there was the relationship with the IDB, the development bank, that was looking at really wanting to fund ultimately some of these initiatives and ideas. And so, their general mindset would be a big kind of street reconstruction or a sewer project, something like that. But what we were talking about was a different type of interaction that was more community involved and engaged. So public space transformations with temporary initiatives and things like that. And something that I think was important in our early site visits was I presented to the mayor, the team there, different projects examples, right? Kind of a little bit throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I show waterfront plans, I show kind of community plans, zoning, resiliency, all these things. But I also showed a project from a different part of my life, which is work I do in my own community back in Indianapolis, which is really kind of grassroots, get your hands dirty type of stuff. And that was what really resonated there. And so it was interesting as an outsider, like my kind of expertise in waterfront community planning and development wasn't the only component that was important to think about in terms of strategies for what planning is or what urban design is. And so that was kind of formative in who we ultimately selected as team members. And while we went back and framed some of our discussions was around that actionable project, things that people that actually live in that community could directly engage in, that could that they're not just people, stakeholders coming to the community meeting, that these were projects that this community was actually going to do and implement directly. So that was very formative. That was a key part of many of the conversations that we had when we had the kind of the hundreds of kids or the dozens of community residents, stakeholders kind of coming out to meetings. We're talking about, this is what I'm actually going to do as a direct result of this. So we have in our report, and you can find the report online, kind of a matrix of short-term, long-term goals, but also high cost, low cost, high investment, low investment in terms of people's time and energy that we sort of gave directly for the Yarborough communities, very specific targeted recommendations. But we also provided some case study examples to kind of show that these projects can be done in low budgets and low staffing and low resources. So that kind of mirroring of giving some specific recommendations there that we know are things that it wasn't our idea, it was people at the meeting's idea. Or, you know, we talked to the mayor and the staff and say, is this possible? And they said, oh yeah, we can do that, right? And so there's that very direct action that's possible.
Mm-hmm. So community planning at Sister CM CPAT is, you know, obviously something that we volunteers from mostly APA, but we do get some volunteers from outside APA as well. You know, it's generally a good experience for people, you know, by the end of it. And I'm just curious as to what your experience was in this project and perhaps, you know, what you could tell other planners who might want to get involved in the program.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have been an APA member for a time, and I honestly didn't know about CPAT. And you know, after learning about it, it's really great because one, it really in a way it reflects the organization's values, right? The idea of using this incredible resource of the membership of the APA and its networks to help communities that need help is something that I think a lot of people that are in the planning and urban design and urban fields in general are interested in and invested in. And so this is a program that is specifically targeted to do that work. And so kind of learning about the program and seeing the work that's been done was really kind of a great foundation to convince me, like, okay, and carve out the time to do this. And I'm so glad I did because it was really an incredible opportunity. One, to kind of expand your network and the type of work that you do. This was my first time personally working in an international context and in this kind of very focused format. And I learned so much from doing that and so much from the team. These are people that, you know, I work in interdisciplinary in different departments and agencies here in New York, but this was working from people from totally different cities and from, you know, there's an academic, there's somebody that works for a business improvement district, there's a transportation engineer. These are teams that you wouldn't necessarily work with in a professional capacity. And so that was a really great opportunity, and I really would encourage people to look into CPAT and volunteering to use your resources, obviously to benefit a community that needs it, but also for your own professional growth. A great outcome of this project is obviously the project and the relationship with the city, but the new relationships and friendships that come out of the people that I met doing CPAT down in Belize City is great. And in fact, Shannon Van Zandt, she's a professor at Texas A&M in the landscape and planning department there, invited some members of our team back to her school, and we did a whole panel on diversity in urban planning and design. And so we were able to have a whole conversation that was really rooted in the work and the issues that we saw and dealt with down in Belize City, and kind of translating that to some of our own professional work and lives. So it's a really great opportunity and way to kind of expand and to serve.
Well, thanks so much, Justin, for joining us today and obviously for joining the Yarborough Belize CPAT team. We appreciate it. Appreciate your service to APA. If you want to learn more about CPAT, go to planning.org/CPAT, and you can learn about the Belize Project and others.